So how do you create an event? Well, in Drupal, an event is just another content type, but it happens to have a date field. When you go to define your event content type, you'll add a field, possibly called event date or whatever is relevant, but you'll choose the date field type, which will be available once you've installed the date module and enabled it. You'd also specify a widget and proceed to configure the date field. Now, in addition to the standard content type settings, date fields let you specify what attributes to collect: year, month, day, hour, minute, and even second if appropriate. You can also choose an input widget, which by default would be a text field or select list, but if you installed support for it, you might also choose a pop-up calendar. You can also choose the input format. You can set a starting and ending year, which will control the range of the calendar display when it is displayed as a calendar. You can specify the time increments. It defaults to 15 minutes. You can specify a default start and end date, assuming that you are supporting multi-day events, because that is optional. Multi-day event support can be installed and enabled, as we've done, but it's not necessary. All-day event support can also be installed and enabled, as can repeating event support, but none of those are required, as we noted earlier. You can also enable date object caching, which allows you to improve the performance of very large, very active calendars by caching underlying information. Let's go in and take a look at how this works. In our application, I'll go to create a new content type. So I'll go to Structure, Content Types, and I'll add a new content type, which I will call Event. Put a brief description in here. Events for the event calendar. And then I'm going to set the title field to event name. Now, as far as publishing options, I want it published but not promoted to the front page, although I imagine you could in some scenarios. I will go ahead and allow author and date information to be displayed. And I'll leave comments open because perhaps people will want to comment on an event. Under menu settings, though, I'll go ahead and disable this. I don't think it would make sense to add one of our events to a menu. Then I'll save and add fields so that I can add an event date field. I'll choose the date field type, which is available amongst the choices. And I'm also going to choose pop-up calendar, but noting that other choices are available. I'll go ahead and save this new field and then configure it. I could add a second if I wish, but I won't. I'll leave it just as attributes down to the minute. But I do want to collect an end date, though I won't make it required. I have choices around time zone handling, but I'll go ahead and accept the site's time zone. But I do want to enable repeating dates. So I'll go ahead and select yes here. I'll note that I could cache my date objects in memory, but I won't do so here. I'll go ahead and save these general settings. And then I could update the label, provide help text as we've seen, but there are also more settings available here. I could change my date entry format. I could adjust the starting and ending year when this event is displayed. I could adjust the time increments, and I do want an all-day checkbox to be available on the event so that it can be checked if appropriate. I'll go ahead and leave the default date to now, but note that it could be made relative, and you'll see that there's a syntax for specifying where the date lands, whether it's a number of days or perhaps the next Saturday or so on. But I'll go ahead and leave it as now and leave the end date the same as the default date, although that could be relative as well. I'll go ahead and scroll down, review my prior settings from the previous screen, save settings, and we now have our event object. So I'll go to add content of the event type, add an event, noting that the URL is node/add/event in case I wanted to add a menu item for adding events to the calendar. And I'm going to create an event I'll call Book Fair. Welcome to our world of books. And I'm going to say that the start date through my pop-up will be next week, although notice the input sequence is matching the format selected. And I can use the keyboard arrow keys to adjust the time. I'll make the end date the following Wednesday. 3-day book fair should be enough. And because our format is specifying military time, my end time will be 1700 or 5 o'clock. I won't make it a repeating book fair, but note that I could, and that the repeat support allows us to exclude particular dates or include additional dates that wouldn't be part of the normal repetition pattern. As for the rest of my publishing settings, it's still a node of a content type, so I could create a revision. It will have a URL path determined by PathAuto. I could control the comments, the authoring information, and see that it is published. I'll save this, and it's displayed as you would expect for a node of a particular content type. And here's the default display of our event date information. Obviously, we could add additional fields and control the layout of this display as well. But note the URL, content/book fair, again emphasizing that our events are simply another node of a specified content type that happens to have event information. In an upcoming lesson, we'll look at how to display these within a calendar.